what position group is really catching your eye in terms of they're going to have a hard time whittling that down to 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever the position group is going to call for?
Yeah, that's what always comes down to, right? Are you going to keep 6 receivers, or are you going to keep 3 tight ends? 4 running backs versus 3 running backs. I mean, that's really what you're talking about. And so often, special teams plays a big part of that, maybe the biggest part.
Yeah.
But I would say that we know where they're deep, right? Outside linebacker. We just talked about that. Guys, I don't think Chris Braswell's on this football team. Now, he may have an injury settlement. There may be something that is going on with him physically. The one thing I'll say about Jason Light is that he has walked away from his mistakes in the past.
Yeah.
But they invested heavily, and were fortunate enough to get a Ruben Bain and to go with Yaya Diaby. And, you just look at with David Walker, Aquadine Muhammad, that list. Kamara, I think, has a good chance to make this team. That might be one to look at to see if maybe he gets on here. But I don't see a spot for Braswell, really. Corner is interesting only from the standpoint that I think that Garnes and maybe even Pepe Williams have done enough to stay here, right? And McCullum, looks like Morrison's going to be okay. Parrish, Keontae Scott, all those guys are on the team, right? So how many of those
feels
guys
like the odd man out might be Josh Hayes, right?
Josh Hayes, to me, is the guy that's not going to be here. And he's primarily your special teams guy. We've seen him try, bless his heart, to go out there and play corner, when they had to count on him to start. It wasn't good. And so I just think you have younger, cheaper, better talent at that spot. Receiver, how many do they keep? They keep 6, and then if they do, what about David Sills? What a good special teams player, knows the offense, mentor to Ten Hurst. Hurst told me that David Sills is the guy that has taught him this offense. So he has that role. We saw Steinbrenner's own Dean Patterson IV. Maybe play his way onto a special teams. Who knows? You're going to keep Cam Johnson as a return guy, if nothing else, and run the jet sweeps and things like that. So the places where they have a lot of players, obviously you got decisions. I think tight end is another position. I think you could see Devin Culp not make this football team.
I agree.
I think he's very vulnerable. I still think he's a good player, but if you're going to keep, I think Bauer Sharp makes the football team.
Oh, I do too,
because he's a little more balanced in the blocking.
I think Bauer Sharp could end up being tight end 2 by the end of the year.
I don't disagree with you.
Because Payne Durham is entering a contract year. I'm not sure that they're going to re-sign Payne. I mean, his numbers going to go up. They want tight ends on.
Not there.
Yeah, the production is not there, and they want rookie salaries on this team, right? Because you're gonna have the haves and the have-nots on this team. Baker Mayfield's going to be a really, really big have next year. We already saw Vita Vea become an even bigger have right now. And so that means you got to have some have-nots. And those are the guys on those cheap rookie deals making the league minimum. And I think that's why they like Bauer Sharp. When you look at offensive line, Greg, probably going to keep 9. But, we've seen Justin School not play particularly well. Ben Chikuma started off pretty good, but then not play well. I was told that this team likes the strength of its offensive tackles, but I think School and Chikuma have been a little shaky. Does that mean that you almost have to kind of keep both? They have Paul Rubelt. He's going to be that roster exemption guy because he's born in Germany. He's that international pathway player. But how's the offensive line going to shake out? We saw Billy Schrauth return to practice today in pads, and he needs to play on Friday night against the Jaguars. He's a 5th-round pick. I don't know that his spot is locked up. Is it him versus Luke Haggard? How do you see the depth beyond the 5 starters shaking out?
Yeah, I think it's fairly sad. I mean, the big question for me was whether Billy Schrauth would have to start the year in IR, and I would put somebody like Elijah Klein or Luke Haggard on the 53, just as an interior backup. But no, I think their backups are fairly well set. It looks like Dan Feeney will be the backup center. They kind of do that thing where Bredesen shifts over, but the guard you put in there isn't necessarily starter quality either. So I think Dan Feeney, guy that played a ton of guard for the Bucs last year, has worked almost exclusively at center. I think he'll be the backup center. I think they'll keep both tackles. I think they like Ben Chikuma as a developmental swing tackle. I think they think of Justin Schooley as being better than Charlie Heck was last year. So if they have to do with injuries, they wish they had Justin last year to fill in.
Right.
And have both of them and kind of decide which one you dress. I'm not sure on that. So now that's 8. 9 would be
Yeah.
Schrouth, and I think the rest are on the practice squad. I don't think the guys that are past those 9 or anyone that's going to get claimed by other 53. So I think they'll be able to have their pick of the young guys that you get. These young guys like Nash Hutmacher and Henry Lutovsky and these other undrafted rookies. They're only really playing on the third line, but they like to have these developmental types. You want to have a full
probably
line.
Ben Scott on the practice squad too.
Ben Scott's probably
third string center.
Center, right. So no, offensive line to me is one of the easier positions right now.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, Elijah Klein's a draft pick. So as much as this team has taken pride in how much they keep their own draft picks, Klein and Culp and Hayes and Braswell are all draft picks that might be on the outside looking in right now, would need a good week, a good game for them to really stay on this roster. It might be the practice squad guys, but again, they've upgraded the depth enough that guys that were on this team and played last year might not make the cut this time around.
Defensive line to me is really intriguing. I've never seen a defensive line this deep. I've seen them more talented, right? Warren Sapp next to Simeon Rice and Greg Spires. I mean, that won a Super Bowl. This is a very good defensive line. I'm not going to say great yet, but it's good. But what I like about it is the depth. When you look at the starters, right, and I'm going to include the outside linebackers in this mix, right? When they're in 3-4, you've got Cansey, you've got Vita Vea, you've got Ashawn Robinson, you've got Bain on one side, Diaby on there. That's really good. When Vita Vea and Yaya Diaby were off the field last year, catching their breath on a long drive, right, and it's third down, and that nickel rush unit was Chris Braswell, Anthony Nelson, Greg Gaines, and a rookie Elijah Roberts. Like, the quarterback could just, probably take a nap back there, wake up, and then throw a pass. It didn't frighten anybody. But now, Rick, when you look at this defensive line, that second unit consists of a much better, more experienced Elijah Roberts, who's had a hell of a camp in preseason, right? Nacho, who's back and is the mouth of the South once again and playing pretty well too. Yeah. And then you've got, either David Walker or Al-Quadin Muhammad, on those guys, or maybe you put in Nelly and he'll come in and get a sack and a half again. It's just so much deeper along this line. But the problem is, looking at the defensive tackle specifically, Vita Vea, Kalijah Cansey, Ashawn Robinson, those are your 3 guys in your 3-4. Then you have Elijah Roberts. You've got Nacho. There's 5. They typically keep 6. They got a draft pick and invested in Mr. Fisticuffs today, DeMonte Capehart, who threw a punch and hit somebody's helmet. Not the smartest thing to do, but they like him. But they also like Elijah Simmons, who's been getting a lot of snaps, and Jason Jones too. Yeah. This is a an embarrassment of riches at defensive tackle here. Whoever ends up making that 6th and final spot better watch out, because there's going to be 2 guys in the practice squad that if they're playing better, they could get some elevations. What are your thoughts on the defensive tackle position, Rick?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a great problem to have. And I don't know that any of those guys they cut gets through waivers, because that's a position that's so coveted, in the National Football League. And all of them have played some. But, when you can, you mentioned Nacho and guys, when there are injuries or you need to, switch guys out after a long series, man, to be able to come in there with veterans, that's a different deal. When you got young players like Braswell backing up starters, you never know what you're going to get. Right. These guys are all in with veterans that have played a lot of good football, and they're playing a lot of good football now. And you're not asking Nunez Roches to play 60 snaps a game, right? And so those guys can pin their ears back and give them the best they got. I love their depth at the front 7. I think, the inside linebacker position might be a little light if you get an injury or 2. We'll see. But those guys in the football, and this, guys. I mean, it's one in the trenches, man. It's one at the line of scrimmage on both sides.
Block and tackle game, always will be.
Block and tackle, and if you can move and reset the line on either side, that's how you win. And I like their depth. I like their experience. And they've got some real game wreckers. I mean, they got potentially 3 or 4 game wreckers, just on in the front 7, and we haven't really addressed the linebackers yet. So this is the best group they've had since Shaq Barrett, and JPP were running the edge, and Vito was in the middle.